A millionaire thinks differently. The millionaire earns money not to spend it, but to invest it.
So the first thing with anybody who wants to change their result is not to change their behavior, because just changing your behavior is not enough.
I think where most new investors make a mistake is when
nurturing the database is the necessary evil. If you want to be successful, you've got to stay in.
You can make as much money as you want if you're willing to get skilled and you're willing to be systematized. So I studied voraciously, and within 4 years, I went from 1 sale in real estate to 100 sales a year. The average agent in my office was making 6 sales a year. I was making 100.
I believe it.
I was crushing it. I was systematized. I had follow-up. I had rapport. I dropped off forget-me-not flowers door to door. I had calendars. I was at the church. I was doing fundraisers for the schools. I was just all in, and therefore I was the go-to guy. Then I bought the company I was working for. But the key factor to the success came in that I had a mentor. And I had a mentor who was really good at what he did, Jeff. And he just said to me, if you're willing to just trust me for 6 months, just do exactly what I say, you're going to shorten the curve rapidly. And I said, I'm in. And so I didn't question what he taught me or what he told me. I just did it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a big thing is people are always looking for these shortcuts. So you have a mentor that says, hey, do this, do that. And they're like, well, I could tweak it this way and I could do half of it if I did. And they mess with the formula. There's a recipe to bake a cake. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I think I'll put in a little bit more sugar because I like it sweet. No, there's a reason that you put a pinch of salt in a cake, even though you think it doesn't make sense. So I think that was a difference for me is I was very coachable and I had a good work ethic. And when you combine those two, I say to people, if you want to be successful, come to me with passionate curiosity and a work ethic, and I'll turn you into a millionaire, guaranteed.
I teach a lot of people more of the online marketing side of things, although we use online marketing to help people grow all kinds of businesses. But for a lot of people, it's like, hey, I just want to make money online. I don't even know what that means, but I know I want to do it. And I would liken it very much to residential real estate. And you were on the residential side, right?
Yes.
Okay, listing homes and such. I have a buddy in Dallas who's one of the fastest growing residential real estate team leaders down there. And he kind of says the same thing. It's like, these are two worlds, online, digital marketing and real estate, where like anybody with a basic set of abilities, and I mean like basic, like walking, talking, the ability to groom themselves at a reasonable level, like, it doesn't take much, can literally be wildly successful. And yet they are almost uniquely among all industries, the two that have some of the lowest success rates, digital marketing and real estate. And I assume some of that is because there's, at least perceptually a low barrier to entry. So it's like just millions of people flood into it.
True.
But there is something else too, that I think you alluded to, which is like things that are that formulaic, but that also take the consistency and the repetition and the compounding value of what some people, I guess, consider a long period of time. Like, hey, do this every day for 2 years. To you or me, we're like, well, shoot, as long as it works, I'm totally willing to do that. But to a lot of people, they're like, I can't do that. I need it in 30 days. Maybe you can speak to your experience, because I assume as a real estate franchise owner, I know you had, I think, six franchises at one point. You probably cycled a lot of people in and out that weren't willing to do the process. Why are people so much their own enemies in that regard?
Yeah. So beautiful. I love the way you communicate. There's a couple of things. I interviewed a guy named Chris Rouse who held an Olympic athlete for an Olympic backstroke swimming record for 9 years. And it was echoed with the book Atomic Habits. And what they talk about is the fact that the difference between the Michael Jordans and the Roger Federers is that they've found a way to fall in love with repetition. They understand that the monotony of doing the same stroke over and over again leads to an unconscious nuance that gives them the edge. The average person, when you tell them 2 years, first of all, they're usually so out of whack that they need to eat tomorrow. They have to hunt. They can't farm. 2-year program is a farming program. There's a cycle of planting a seed, nurturing it, fertilizing it, taking care of it, and harvesting it later. I'm very good at doing that. I think long term. I learned to think long term, maybe because I grew up on a farm. And I understood that you didn't plant the seed and get the tomato tomorrow. You had to think 3-4 months in advance if you wanted to eat. Most people don't think that way. So if you fall in love with repetition, you understand the cycle of time, and you understand the power of compounding, that is, you do 20 calls every day, no matter what, then eventually it'll lead to a lead that you can put into your funnel, and you systematize it through technology. Now you have a business that's worth owning. But there's a lot of monotony in that. There's a lot of boredom. There's a lot of things that don't pay right away. So you have to constantly go back to your vision and go, yes, if I create this YouTube, channel, and I get it up to 4,000 hours of views, which will take me a year, and I create all this content, which at the beginning it's going to suck and be terrible, and I will suck and be terrible. But a year from now, I'll be making $100,000 off of commercials. That's really cool. Most people can't run that race.
Yeah.
And that's why 97% of people are not millionaires in North America, and they're all living paycheck to paycheck, working for people like you and me.
The repetitions, but it's not mindless. And it's the same way when I used to play the piano. It's not mindlessly executing the repetitions. It's executing the repetitions at a high level of consciousness, where every repetition you say, how can it be a tiny bit better than the last repetition?
I'm with you, man. Well said. I agree 100%. It is this process I've coined it CSI. I think Tony calls it CANI. For me, it's creative suggestions for improvement. It's that every time I do a process or I do a video, and I could tell I have a white sheet, and every time we do a recording for YouTube, we write down, what did we think we did well? What could we improve? And then, it's like, when I do it, we need a bottle of water. We always set up a bottle of water for me and the cameraman, because sometimes my voice gets dry. So boom, we learned that. So that's part of the process. We do our checklist and we go in. So we limit the number of errors that we make. We get a tiny, tiny bit better, a little bit more efficient. And over time, we stand out from the crowd because we were committed to our craft.
Yeah, and to that, I have to, for those watching on YouTube, you'll see for exactly the same reasons, I have my half-gallon bottle of ionized water with me at all times during interviews and anything where I have to talk for any length of time. I think there's sort of a mathematical silliness to a lot of people's thinking. And my query here isn't to mock or deride people. It's to say, hey, if we can unravel the silliness and people can look themselves in the mirror and say, why do I have that silliness? Then they can hopefully get to a deeper answer that allows them to discard the silliness. And here's what I mean. I'll use my YouTube as an example, and I don't know your process, but I figure the average YouTube video takes me an hour to create. Maybe 30 minutes of research and prep and 15 to 30 minutes of delivery, right? And then, at this point, I have a team that takes it and makes it look more produced. But when I started, I didn't. When I started, I took the raw video, I put it into Camtasia, I added a bumper, I sent it off to rev.com, got the transcription, brought it back in, loaded it myself. Let's say when I started, it took me 4 hours to create. So three to five of those videos a week. And by the way, I don't think you need to do 3 to 5. I think realistically you need to do 2 to kind of get momentum on a YouTube channel. So now that would take me 2 hours a week. When I started, it would take me 8. Either way, it's a very doable thing. And you say to someone, okay, it's going to take you, let's say, anywhere from 2 to 8 hours a week. You're going to need to do it consistently for 3 years. By the way, it's not just going to require that you do the work, but in order to keep producing valuable content and having meaningful things to say, it's also going to level you up in terms of your input, the reading that you do, the information that you process, the media that you consume to find inspiration, and just, it's going to challenge you in really awesome ways, in many ways. And that's it. Do that for 3 years. and you'll have a semi-passive income of $100,000 a year that you can nurture for the rest of your life. That sounds like a pretty sweet deal. And by the way, I assume it's the same in real estate. It's like, hey, I need you to make these calls for an hour a day. I need you to write thank you notes for 30 minutes a day. I need you to beat the streets for 2 hours a day, right? And so the time to value relationship with the things that we're talking about is so much better than the time to value relationship of most jobs.
Yeah.
But people will do the job all day long and they will kick and scream about what we're talking about. Why? Why the mathematical silliness?
Well, one of the things we teach is there are 17 wealth or mind files that people get, crossed up. And one of them is that the language of the employee is they are thinking, I'm going to trade time for money. I'm going to get a paycheck. I'm going to have security. I'm going to have my 401k. I'm going to have all those things that make me feel safe. And so when you give somebody that package of language, they start speaking that's what they know. The millionaire thinks differently. The millionaire earns money not to spend it, but to invest it. Mm-hmm. The millionaire earns money to get educated at a higher level, not to be entertained. So when you start to break down the habitual thought processes, they lead to different destinations. And so you and I are using a language that leads us to problem solving, growth, entrepreneurship, possibility, curiosity. And the most people that are struggling, they're just eating a different diet of words. And you can't get in shape eating only carbs. And you can't get rich, when you're eating a diet of an employee mindset. So that's where we take people in and we go, okay, tell us what your inner narrative is. Tell us what words you're using to have a conversation with yourself. And then we help them reformulate that so that they now have this possibility thinking versus a probability thinking of just survival.
I'm so grateful you just said that. One of the value, in fact, I have it on my wall here. My original core beliefs document has, we favor possibility over probability.
Whoa, dude, look at that.
Nailed it. I'm so grateful you said that. And here's the thing. I actually think, it's interesting we're talking probabilities because if you ask people what they want out of life, and I guess depending on how beaten down they've become, I would say the average to above average person, the person who's not just totally smashed down, will say some pretty big things that they want out of life, right? Like, I want to take a trip someday. I want to retire. I want to be able to take care of my kids and my grandkids. I want to start an orphanage in Calcutta or like whatever, right? Is Calcutta even still the name of that city? I think I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's still Calcutta. Sorry, I get distracted. And yet you say, okay, well, here are the things you say you want out of life. So probability wise, is the employment path more or less probable to get you to your desired outcome than the entrepreneurship path? I would argue that for most people, the employment path is a much lower probability way of having their dreams come true.
Oh, 100%. But here's the thing that I teach is increase your earn, decrease your burn. And the way you do that is that at any given point in time, I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody that's become wildly successful that worked 35 to 40 hours a week forever. Anybody I know, at least for a 3 to 5 year period, burned the candle at both ends and they work 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week. And here's the benefit is imagine you have a job that makes you 50 grand a year and you work 40 hours a week or 30 grand, whatever it is. And you spend approximately all that money to live because that's what people do.
Right.
Now, add a second side hustle or a second job. And I've done the math on this. Is 168 hours in a week, sleep 8 hours a day, you have 112 hours left, give you 30 hours to brush your teeth and take a shower and all that sort of stuff, work out a little bit. You still got 80 hours left. Yeah. So you could do 2 jobs. So you do your one job at 30,000 or 50,000, whatever it is, you spend all that money to live, and you take your second job and you invest all that money. Now, if you're working 80 hours a week, guess what? You have less time to spend money. Yeah. So the 30,000 you were spending before on entertainment and going out, you're actually going to save more money. So you're going to Let's say you made 30 and you make another 30 in your second job, you now have 60. You were spending 30, you'll probably spend 20. So now you have 40,000 to invest. You take that 40,000 and you start buying some real estate, or you do some good things with it. You are going to rapidly now add a player to your scoring team. If you're LeBron James and you're the only person that can score financial points for your household, and you need to take a break on the bench or you're injured, you're screwed. Yeah. So what we do is we go, be your LeBron James and do double time, but now take the leftover money and add another player to your team called, an online e-commerce, sell some product on the side, have a piece of real estate, a rental property. Now you got 2 or 3 different players on the team scoring while you're sleeping, resting, and relaxing. Within 3 to 5 years, you've got the passive income of the YouTube channel that will be making you money while you sleep. And it's a complete game changer. So I say take the last 5 years of your working life, bring them forward and put them into these 5 years here and double down or double up and change your life forever.
First of all, I want to say, I love that concept of saying, okay, right now you're on a track to work for the next 30 years. So why don't we just take the last 5 years and pair it up with the current 5 years? And let's work both 5-year stretches concurrently, because you're young enough and you've got the energy to do it.
Yes.
And then, by the way, it's not going to just shave off those 5 years. It'll probably shave off like 20 of them.
Yes.
That's
Bingo.
brilliant. I love that. I really do. And by the way, I'm stealing like all this stuff. This is just so good. I wrote down increase your earn, decrease your burn. Like, consider yourself flattered via my imitation. That's tremendous stuff. But the other thing is, I really think there's kind of a chicken and the egg counterintuitive aspect to this. And I would say it's true specifically of working out and starting a side hustle. Those are 2 things that people say, I should do it, but I don't have the time. And my argument would be, the reason you don't have the time is, and I don't think anybody's immune to what I'm about to say. Obviously, it's to varying degrees. But if you do a ruthless analysis of your life and your schedule, you're going to find at least some windows of time in which you're compensating or medicating for your lack of fulfillment.
100%.
Whether it's your bowling league or your poker night or your shopping on Saturdays or your weekly, ice cream indulgence, or there's going to be some little things that are like, they're actually not about need, they're about dopamine. And the need for the dopamine is because there's some pit of unfulfilledness in your life. So actually, if you just do it only takes like 3 weeks to change a habit, or whatever the data is, or I guess Ty Lopez said it's 67 days. But if you'll just grin and bear it for those 67 days, say, you know what, I'm going to substitute my dopamine compensation for the extra effort in whatever time I can, free up in that substitution. Eventually you'll get to where like, you don't actually need the other thing anymore. And you realize the time was there all along.
Yeah, I agree again. I feel like we're saying the same thing in different ways. I want to like almost disagree with you just for the fun of it. But I say sometimes people ask me when I go golfing or something, they go, what do you do? Sometimes just for the humor of it, I say I'm a drug dealer. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I go, I'm an international drug dealer. The drugs that I specialize in are dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, but I help you manufacture them in a natural way by living life alive, by going for your dreams, by being comfortable with being uncomfortable, by building things, by giving things. And when you do that, then you don't need those distractions and those addictions at the same high level in order to medicate yourself to feel good. So the more you can be intentional, purposeful about your life and make a difference, the naturaler you have a high, and then you can live and you can build things. And that's exciting for people. But most people, A, they don't have the strategy. B, they're not surrounded by a passionate person that is going to shift their focus to a place of possibility. So they're like, oh, they just fall into survival. And then after a while, they're freaking numb and they're half asleep. And waking them up usually only happens when they hit rock bottom. Something stupid happens, like they get diabetes or the IRS is calling them and they have to finally get on the phone and get off their ass. So it's a process. And that's why, again, so few people are really healthy and wealthy, because it's easier to take a pill than to get your ass in the gym.
Yeah, I completely concur. I'll share with you something really cool that I heard yesterday. You know, I swear, if somebody wants to have a lot to say, just start interviewing people and steal all their best stuff.
Yeah.
I interviewed David Meltzer yesterday, who you're
Love him.
with, and he dropped an acronym that was just so good. He said, you got to get your dose. Somehow or other, you're going to get your dose. And that means DOSE, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and other endorphins. And I was like,
there you go.
Good. That's good. I'm taking that too. But so to your point, you talked about finding a passionate person. That was something that really stood out in what you just said. Like, all the tactics, all the strategies, all the intellectual, figuring of what to do, how to do. There's some sort of intangible, and I would argue, essential component to this, which is just getting fired up, right? Like enthusiasm and passion, and yet, man, it's in short supply.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would say that from a young age, it's actually, like the most enthusiastic guy in the high school is probably the guy who gets teased the most.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. So check it out. If you're depressed and you're down and you're frustrated, you're kind of normal, right? You're having a bad day and people are like, hey buddy, it's going to be okay, man. I feel badly for you. If you're walking around and you're like euphoric, people are like, that person's crazy, man. They must be on drugs.
Yeah, he's
we're not rewarded.
He's in a manic state right now.
Yeah, we're not rewarded for being exceptionally enthusiastic or happy. We're actually discouraged because we make other people feel less than, so they pull us back like the crabs in the bucket. So that's a cultural, societal thing, and that's why another reason why I created my tribe. And we have a T-shirt that we give people when they join. It says, we don't apologize for being awesome.
Nice. Ugh.
You come into our tribe and have to go, well, you know what? My son scored the winning goal on the weekend. I made $20,000 on the market, and I made love 3 times this weekend, and feel bad about it. You say that, and the other person goes, no way. 3 times? That's cool. Tell me how you did it.
The environment that person's living in, environment is food, the basement, friends, radio, music, television, Netflix, the refrigerator, your bedroom, your office. All of those are environments. Everything is an environment. Your mind, your body, all of those things, what you listen to is an environment. And so I'd have to ask that person, what environment are you in that's conditioned you to think, feel, and behave a certain way? Because once you understand that it's your environment that conditions you to think, feel, and behave a certain way, because if you hang out with broke people, you're going to become broke or stay broke. If you hang out with rich people, you're going to start to think a little different like rich people, which is why your podcast is so amazing, because they get to sit down and listen to different people who've made certain levels of wealth. So the first thing with anybody who wants to change their result is not to change their behavior, because the reason why they haven't changed their behavior in the first place is because just changing your behavior is not enough. You can't just change the way you think and feel either. You have to change the way that you're conditioned, and the way that you're conditioned is in your environments. So you need that guy, Jeff, 12 years ago, needs new friends, needs new things he watches, needs new things he listens to, needs a new room. It's probably got shit all over the floor. He needs to clean it up so he's organized, because when you're organized, you have an organized mind. And when you can be cleared in the mind, you can control how you start to behave a lot easier. When everything's messy and clouded, so are you. And so you need to go back. You don't just say, hey, Jeff, from 12 years ago, here's a new habit for you to do. Shut up. That's not going to work. For 99% of people, willpower and saying, I'm going to go to the gym, that's not enough. That's why whatever the stat is, 96% of New Year's resolutions fail, because saying you're going to change the behavior and doing it short term is not enough. And changing how you think and feel, although there's ways you can do it, that's not enough. You need to go to the absolute root cause. How do I get a new result? Well, change the behavior, change the thoughts, change the feelings. How do you do that? Change the conditioning. How do you do that? Change the environment. If I forced you into an environment where I made you the healthiest, best, successful version of you, I couldn't do that just by talking to you. I have to actually change your environment, or I could do it by talking to you, and then you have to change your environment. And the thing that sucks for most people is their environment that they're so attached to is their friends, their family, where they live, and all of that. I've heard all the excuses. Oh, but I live in Mississippi with my parents who are broke and I can't leave. And I'm like, but Mississippi is the reason you're broke and your parents are, but you can't leave, but you want to be successful. Something has to change. And for me, I was that Jeff 12 years ago, and my own version, as many people listening might still be that person. You got to change the environment. You got to change every aspect of your life that is conditioning you to think, feel, and behave the way that you are. And the first thing is usually your friends and your family. And it doesn't mean you have to change them. It just means you have to distance yourself from letting them condition you. Oh, Jeff, don't do that. That's too risky. Don't buy Bitcoin. That's stupid. Don't go to that seminar. It's a scam. Why are you listening to this Jeff and Mark guy? Those guys are scammers. Those guys are rich douches. No, we're not. We understand. We've learned certain things. We've applied them. And I get a lot of joy and fulfillment sharing this information because it's changed my life. I used to be the same Jeff in the basement 12 years ago too, in my own version. So I started searching on the internet. How do I become rich? How do I become successful? How do I become confident? How do I become the cool guy? And I started finding Tony Robbins and all these other people. I became obsessed. 10, 12, 14 hours a day studying that stuff. I was in the back of the classroom. If I even went, I ditched class a lot of times. And I go sit on the beach and look at the mansions and listen to Tony Robbins and all this other stuff and say, I'm going to own those one day. And so I just became obsessed. 10, 12, 14 hours a day, calling up seminars, negotiating for me to volunteer to get in a free ticket. I went to every possible seminar I could go to, listened to every possible book. I swear, 20 to 25,000 hours of personal development is what I've studied over the last 14 years. Just became obsessed like I always do. I'm all in or I'm all out. And then I got to a point where when I graduated college, I was like, I'm either going to go and work for somebody else and be the number one sales guy, because that was what I figured. How do you get rich? Become the top sales guy. So I became really good at sales, psychology, NLP, neurolinguistic programming. And I was like, I'm going to become the top sales guy at a company, or I'm going to start my own business. And so I said, screw it, I'm going to start my own business. So I started my own business. And then so Monday through Friday, I was working on my business when I graduated college. Saturday and Sunday, I'd go fly around the country and even Canada and other countries. And I was the guy who would speak on stages as an MC and sales rep who would go and speak at somebody's seminar and then help sell at the back of the room and generate, $500,000 to $2 million in a weekend as the sales rep for some other guy's event. So I did that on the weekend. That gave me some additional cash flow to keep reinvesting back into my company to start it. Failed and struggled miserably for the first year, then 2 years. Within 2 years, I was making $250,000. 3 years, over $500,000. 4 years, made my first $1 million. 5 years, multi-millions. And now I'm in my 8th year, and we're doing well. we're at 8 figures. So we're doing pretty good now. And yeah, it's been a wild journey.
Man, what a crazy story. You reminded me of some of the things I was going to talk about earlier. You described that, and I would suggest, you're what, in your 30s?
Yeah, I'll turn 31 in a couple days.
Okay, I'm 42, and you made me think, wonder how much personal development I've done. I mean, at least 25, 30,000 hours. I mean, I still do an hour or two every day. It's just of course my life.
Well, you're also living it. And that's the difference too, right? Is you need to do it at first, which means doing it is studying it and embodying it and being at the seminars and reading the books and listening to the audio tapes, so that you can condition yourself for how to unconsciously live personal development. Totally. I'm thinking, feeling, and behaving personal development, where before I needed to study it and learn it, now I'm living it every single day. So, I mean, really 24 hours a day, you add that up, it's that's truly how many hours you got under your belt.
Well, I think a lot of it is I feel like I live my life trying to find the next question so that I can go seek the answer with intention. And I think a lot of living is about actually trying to avoid creating questions. That's how a lot of people live. I love finding a better question. When I'm and I just think about how I live my life and where my head is at all the time. It's it's not even just how do I solve X problem? It's how do I define the problem in even bigger terms so that it'll beg for an even bigger solution? And then,
Love it.
you know, and it's just, yeah, it's like, I think about my inner monologue sometimes. And I think you're right. After thousands of hours of listening to, you know, every name a personal development person, and I guarantee you I've listened to them for 20
sure.
hours or more. And it's like, I can't not think that way. And it's so.
And that's what you did, though, is you changed the environment to condition yourself so you automatically think and feel and behave congruently to achieving the goals that you want. And that's what most people don't get. You are still the same guy who's the same student who knows that you never made it. You and I met at an event where, even though we're both, you know, relatively successful, we both make millions of dollars, you and I were both going back to the roots that got us to where we're at. You and I both invested thousands of dollars. I think it was $4,000 a ticket.
It was $4,500. And and 2 days before the event, they had already closed the cart, and I was begging the host, Anik, who's our friend. I was like, bro, I just heard about this event. I would have bought a ticket, please. And I had to send him a personal PayPal.
Yeah. So you and I both paid $4,500 plus flights, plus hotels. So, I mean, we're all in for like $7,000 minimum, you know? And so you and I still, this was just last year, are going back to the roots that made us who we are, which is investing in being a student first. Even though we're both in education as leaders and role models and teachers and consultants, the way that we got here is by investing in being a student. And I love that you brought that up, because you're still that same guy, and as am I. What got us to where we're at is that we're always a student first. You and I both paid $7,000 to be at an event. And even though we've known of each other before that, we both really connected in person at that event as a student sitting in the audience of this small little group of successful guys learning from each other. So I just wanted to just pin that, because that's so critical, that, you know, you've never made it. You always got to go back to the basics, and that's being a student.
No, it's so true. And really the best, you know, the best educators are just the best students. That invite other people to learn along with them. What was your first event like? Brad
Sugars is a billionaire, and he has this whole, I've got his collection of books right here. He has a whole series of books, and it's amazing. It's like, he's a billionaire, and he's the guy who taught me. He said this on stage. It was a room full of suit and ties, and I was like 18 years old. And he said, how many of you would, if you could make 10 million or 100 million or $1 billion in the next 10 years, you could achieve any business goal, personal goal, financial goal, 10 years. If all you had to do was shovel elephant poop every single day for 1 hour, and everybody's hand shot up. He's like, only 1 hour a day shoveling elephant poop. And at the end of 10 years, you'll have achieved any financial goal you want. And everybody's hand went up. These are all grown ass adults. I'm 18 years old in the back of the room in a hoodie and a hat. And I'm like, my hand's like, okay. Everyone else's hands up. And these are all grown ass adults with careers and businesses. And this guy's a billionaire asking the question. And then he said, now I got good news. You don't have to actually shovel elephant poop to achieve your goal in 10 years. You just have to replace the hour of shoveling elephant poop with reading a book that will get you closer to the goal. And after 10 years, an hour a day is, 365 hours. And if you do the math, an hour a day at 365 hours ends up being like 2 full months of uninterrupted work. And then you do that for 10 years, that ends up being like 2.5 years of like uninterrupted or whatever, almost 2 years of uninterrupted, nonstop, every day grinding to achieve your goals over 10 years. And he goes, you really want to be an overachiever? Read 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. That day I left the room, I started studying 10 to 14 hours a day of books. Because I said, if that billionaire said I can achieve anything in 10 years, if I read 1 hour a day, I'll read 10 hours a day. And I've been reading, back then I did, I don't anymore. I'm running a multi-million-dollar company and all these other stuff. I used to read 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, plus audiobooks. I would do nothing. That was all I did. And then I started to dwindle down, and now I read about an hour a day. But I used to do 10 to 12 hours a day. And within about 5 years of him saying that, I became a millionaire. And then the next year, a multimillionaire. And, and now it's, 12, 13 years later since that day. But it was all from that advice. An hour a day will pave the way. An hour a day will pave the way. Most people here don't even listen or read for 1 hour a day. So of course you're not going to change your life.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like a lot of people say, yeah, but how do you know? How do you know it's going to work? Like if I do it for 3 months, I haven't seen the result. How do I know to keep doing it for another 3 months or another 3 years or whatever? Yeah. But you know what? To that same person, I would say, are you spending an hour a day at the gym? Because you don't have to wonder if that works.
Exactly.
So what's your excuse there? And by the way, to the guy that does spend an hour a day at the gym consistently, religiously, hasn't missed in 5 years, if that guy says, if you had that conversation with that guy, he'd be like, oh, sweet, I'll read an hour a day. No problem. I already go to the gym. In fact, I'll listen to an audiobook while I'm at the gym. Like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if you heard what Mark just said and your resistance just went up and said, yeah, but there's no certainty, I challenge you to say, am I the person who's getting up an hour early every day, an hour before I was, and going to the gym with that hour, or doing, like, there's going to be some other place in your life where you're also not doing a thing where you don't have to, you can't take the same cop out of lacking certainty, because we all know going to the gym works.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, I literally think everyone's life will change if they just think of that. An hour a day will pave the way. 1 hour a day at the gym or exercise, and 1 hour a day of self-development.
Google neuroplasticity, Google limbic resonance. You cannot spend an hour a day inside the thoughts of another person who's more developed and expert in an area that you desire competence. You cannot spend an hour a day inside of their thoughts and not have it change your brain, any more than you can spend an hour a day in a gym pushing against gravity with weight and not have it change your body. So this idea that it lacks certainty, unless you are arguing that limbic resonance and neuroplasticity are not actually things, and that all psychology and neurological medicine is just made up hocus pocus, then you can't use that argument here either.
Yeah. And the other thing too on that is, you and I both know course junkies and book junkies and education junkies who don't achieve their goals. Like, some people do spend an hour at the gym, but they're sitting on the treadmill on their phone. And so they're like, well, I put an hour in at the gym. I'm like, no, I don't know how I could speak like a sailor if I want, but it's like, I don't know how much that person thinks that they're putting an hour at the gym versus putting in the effort in the hour. And that's the difference I want to make here, is two things. One, it's not the time, it's the effort. And so that's a huge one for people to understand, is you can't just like haphazardly be on your phone and reading a book. You need to just read the book. You can't be like listening to a podcast, but like doing some other activity that's distracting you from really listening. You can't go to the gym and kind of not really work out. I'm talking about for that 1 hour, it's just gym time. For that 1 hour, it's just learning time. That's the difference. You got to put in the actual effort. And then the second thing is, so it's not just doing the habit, it's the effort within the habit. Then the next thing is that you were saying, oh, well, what if the person says, oh, what if it doesn't work? If you're already talking yourself out of your goals and your dream life before you've even started on the path, then that's the first thing that needs to change. And again, it goes back to the conditioning and the environment. They're probably around a lot of people who say, oh, don't even get started on that, Jeff, because, you know, it's probably not going to work out for you. You know, the odds of you becoming a millionaire, Jeff, that's like nothing. There's no chance you're going to become. Don't even try. Just stay at your job, because there's a good chance that in 30 years you could be a millionaire if you do that. And it's like, no, I could be a multimillionaire in 12 months in today's economy if I just start my own online business or affiliate marketing or e-commerce or whatever. So that person probably is around people conditioning them to think there's no way you'll even achieve that. So don't even try. And that's the first thing right there, is they need to be around people like us who help them understand that, like, the time is going to go by anyways. Which is why most people would rather just say the time's going to go by anyways. I'd rather work at a corporation for 30 years and know that I'm semi-guaranteed something. Where for us, nothing's guaranteed, but I know that if I put the effort in, karma, law of attraction, the universe, it usually brings to you what it shows you're putting out the effort. Like in the gym, you can't grind for an hour a day in the gym and get fat. If you're eating healthy and you're grinding in the gym, your body is naturally going to get in shape. It's the same thing. If you hang out around rich people, you get to the seminars, you listen to these amazing podcasts like Jeff's here, you read the books, you do the work, you're going to change your life. But again, you can't just try to change your financial situation. You need to change your mindset, your beliefs, your habits, your health. Like, going to the gym is not just going to make you feel better and look better. It's going to help you make more money. And that's, most people don't get that connection, because there are overweight people who are rich, but they're usually also people who struggle in other areas because they're so all in on the money that they're making excuses and stories about that it's okay for me to let my health slide and my relationship with my children slide, or my relationship with personally slide. I only have business friends and I only make money. Everything else can get put on the side. I believe it's about balance and integration, if you believe in that, and having it all. I hate to say that and sound like a cliche person, but like, you can have it all. You can have amazing relationships, an amazing body, mind, spirit connection, and be rich. You can have it all, but it doesn't happen on accident.
Yeah, I always say there's only two kinds of rich people. There's people that are rich because they're obsessed with money. And they're the guys that are like, well, that's okay. When my heart fails, I can afford the best surgeon. When my marriage fails, I can afford the best attorney. Like, it's all good because I'm rich.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's people that are rich because they're obsessed with excellence. And they have it all. So whenever somebody tells me they want to make more money, the very first thing we have to decide is, okay, you want to get rich? They're like, yeah, I want to be rich. Cool. Okay, cool. Which kind of rich person do you want to be? Do you want to be a rich person who's obsessed with money, or a rich person who's obsessed with excellence? And if you're a rich person who's obsessed with money, you'll probably go through multiple marriages. You'll have failing health. You'll be an asshole. Like, nobody want to be around you, but you will have lots of money. Do you want to be that kind of rich person? They say, no, no, no. Okay. You want to be a rich person who's obsessed with excellence. You're vibrant. You're alive. You have good posture. You speak well. You're energetic. People like you. You bless the world with your abundance and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be that kind of rich person. All right. Awesome. Congratulations. You're now that kind of rich person. Just give it some time. The money will show up, but you can start now, right? It literally, it can start now. You can, what time are you waking up in the morning? Like, what have you got on your agenda for the day? Like, how much are you going to spend with Netflix versus how much are you going to spend?
Yeah.
There's a list of 100 books. Like, that all can start immediately. And then it just, again, adjusted for time, you're already rich.
Exactly. I love that.
Kind of fill itself in there at the end when the curve goes like this, because it's had enough runway. But like, you start those habits, it's a done deal.
And like I was telling you earlier, with this sheet of paper here, I've already made $300 million. I'm 30 right now, and I have 20 years before I'm 50, when the paper says I'll be worth 300 million in net worth by the age of 50 or sooner. It's already happened. Like, I can go back to the Jeff who was in the basement 12 years ago, but the Mark version of that. And I remember when I said, all y'all think I'm the dumb kid who doesn't make money, who's stupid and is the least likely to succeed. And, if I can't make it in school, how can I make it in the real world? And I'm telling everybody, oh my gosh, I'm going to be rich. Tony Robbins and all this other stuff is like changing my life. You should study it too. And they're like, how can I listen to a dumb kid who doesn't even know how to do good in school? And I remember saying, someday I'll make more money than all of you. And they were like, oh, no way, no way. And some of those people that I said that to are my homies. And it was just like, guys grabbing each other. And now they work at my company. They work with me, right? At my company. And it's just the mindset of like, anything I've set my mind on, I'll be one of the best paintball players in the world. Did it. I'll achieve the biggest prize money in the world. I did it. I'll have a multi-million-dollar company in my 20s and be a multi-millionaire in my 20s. Did it. I'll have, an 8-figure company by 30. Did it. I'll have $300 million by 50. Did it. And like you just said, it's already happened. The difference is every day I wake up and I'm living, breathing, thinking, attracting, and doing everything I possibly can so that it happens. I'm not saying it's going to happen, and then I'm not thinking, behaving, and doing everything to make it happen. And that's where most people mess up, is they hear what we're saying and they just think, oh, well, it's going to happen. Law of attraction. And there's a lot of people in the woo-woo law of attraction space that are out of shape, don't have any money, and they're teaching all this woo-woo law of attraction stuff, which I believe the universe does attract to you what you put out, what you think, feel, and behave comes to you. But there's so many parts. Again, we could go for days about all this stuff, but there's so many parts where most people drop the ball. They think if I just do the woo-woo law of attraction, it'll come to me. And then they think, oh, but I don't, they're overweight. And they're like, that doesn't have to do with my law of attraction. I'm trying to attract this. Right. And it's like, no, you got to have it all. You do have to work on your body, not just to look good and feel good from, oh, it's your ego. No, it's not. Working on my body affects my relationships, how I think, how I feel, and therefore everything in my entire financial realm.
Going back to that, we won't use Jeff, we'll use Mark, that version of Mark, the undeveloped version of Mark. And there may be 1,000 of him listening right now. Mm-hmm. What's the one thing that you want to say to that kid that he needs to hear?
I would say, you can become exactly who you want to become. So be extremely clear on who that person's going to be. And then just know that you have to put in the work, and no one's going to do it for you. It's no one's responsibility. It's nobody's fault except for your own. You will become exactly who you choose. So be extremely clear on who that person's going to be, and then work every day to become that person.
Do you have an exercise or a process? And I'm guessing you might, because you do personal branding work with people.
Yeah.
Helping that younger version of yourself who may feel muddy. helping him get that clarity?
Definitely. So I'll summarize and I'll probably leave some things out just for the brevity of the conversation. But basically, I would say draw a little stick figure of you today and you who you're going to be. It's not about drawing muscles on him or money or anything. It's just literally just stick figures for the sake of stick figures. And then you say now, and you can say, future. Now self, future self. And then I want you to write down, how does this person think, feel, and behave on a daily basis? How does your current self think, feel, and behave on a daily basis? What is this person's values? What does this person believe about themselves and what they can accomplish? And what is your current self? Just unbiased, unassociated, disattached. Just think like, if my dream superhero version of myself, how do they think, feel, behave? What do they value? What do they do? What do they believe? What are their model of the world versus your current self? And then you'll see the gap. And then obviously the fill-in is I need to work every day on learning and conditioning myself to be in the environments to become that person. And there's lots of places to do that. Your podcast is just one of many environments to put them on the journey of who they are now versus who they want to become. And that journey is self-mastery, mastering oneself by getting 1% better in all areas of your life. Mentally, how do I get better mentally? I should read books. I should listen to people's podcasts and audio programs, most of which can be for free if you don't have the money, but you'll usually close the gap faster if you buy somebody's program or go to their seminar or get consulting. Most of the things you want to give you the financial help, the life help, the relationship health, most of that is for free, scattered across the internet. We live in a beautiful world where almost anything, the how-to achieve anything is almost on the internet for free. But the how-to is broken up in breadcrumbs and it's scattered across the globe. Good luck piecing it all together, at least in the time frame of which you want, because we're all conditioned to be instantly gratified today and right now. So most people like me are not patient. They want it right now. So if you do have some capital, whatever you got to scrunch together, stop spending it on stupid stuff. You don't need another pair of shoes to look cool. You don't need all this other stuff. You don't need a vacation. You don't deserve a vacation yet. So you save all your money and buy courses, education, a virtual summit, go to stuff like an in-person event if they're doing those right now. But you get the point. Use all your focus, energy, and money on becoming that person. And until you become that person, you don't get the new shoes, the vacation. You don't get to go to the nice restaurant unless, as on the journey, you want to reward yourself for making progress, which I believe is important. You don't want to slave yourself because then you're in the pattern of I'll be happy when, I'll only treat myself when. And that's a bad pattern to get in. You do want to be grateful and enjoy the journey and be happy now. But you want to discipline yourself to put most of your resources towards achieving and becoming that person. I believe that you will have every thought, feeling, emotion, relationship, experience when you become the person who naturally has it. Just like you and I have everything we probably could have ever dreamed of. And that makes us now complacent because we set the bar so low. Yeah. We've already achieved it. And so now we have to raise the bar and set a new goal, whatever that looks like. If it's a philanthropy goal, if it's not finance anymore and lifestyle, then it's philanthropy and making a difference. Whatever it is, we need to keep raising the bar. And so, for that person, there's a lot of things you can do. That's a simple exercise, mapping out all your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, values, beliefs, model of the world, which means when I see a rich guy driving, do I go, what a prick? Or do I go, I wonder how he made his money. I wonder what he does with it. And projecting my model of the world is a successful person must have done good things to have achieved that. And hopefully they're using their success for good. At least I know I will. And changing your model of the world from the rich guy or gal, oh, she must have got it from daddy, or she must have inherited, or so he must have as well. He must have stepped on people's back. That's your model of the world. You're literally telling the universe success is bad. I don't want to be like these successful people. So if that's your model of the world and your beliefs, you need to change that. This guy thinks successful people are like this. He believes success equals this. And there's a gap between you and that person. You need to slowly become that person. And if you don't even know what that person thinks, feels, behaves, values, and believes, that's the first thing you need to work on. If you can't even figure out what you should put into those spaces, there's that much more work that you have ahead of you, which really is just education, knowledge, and getting access to the right people who already can show you that. I always wanted to be Tony Robbins, but then I realized I want to embody the language patterns, the confidence, the physiology. I want to embody the traits and the values and the beliefs that Tony has. I don't want to be Tony. I want his personality traits that anybody can learn to model. You can be an angry person. You can be a happy person. If I'm an angry person, you might be like, I don't want to be like that guy. No, you don't want to be angry. All of us can experience the emotions. So just remember, what emotions do you want to have? It's not, oh, I don't like that person. No, you don't like the way that they're talking. So you don't like their language patterns. You don't like that their language patterns influence you to feel inferior or feel bad. So it's not you don't like that person. That person might just be having a bad day. So learning to have all these, I call them filters, to be aware. That's the first thing you need to do, is become aware of, how do I think, feel, and behave? What do I value and believe and see the world as? Because that is constantly a repetitive feedback loop that's going to condition me to have the same life or the better life. I can become the guy, or I can stay this guy. And it all starts by having a higher level of awareness. So when you think like the old guy, you can quickly filter and say, nope, trigger, I'm thinking like the old me. I need to think like the new me. And so you can start to immediately think, feel, and behave like the new you. And eventually it will become unconsciously competent, automatic behavior, because it's easy to think anyway. I could ask you a question and that would lead your mind into a great place, a proud place, a grateful place, or a depressed place, depending on the question I ask you, can lead your mind to a point of focus that'll influence how you feel. And then that could set the tone for the rest of your day. So knowing to be ultra aware of all of the little triggers throughout the day, and then decide through breath, I can bring myself back to a neutral state. So through deep breath, I can bring myself back to a neutral state, have the awareness to change my thoughts, my feelings, and my behavior. So when I see a guy drive by and cut me off in a Ferrari, instead of being like, what a douche, I can and say, that was what the old me would say. The new me says this. And I literally, like a robot, would say those conversations to myself. I would go, what did you? And then I go, that's what the old me would say. The new me would say this. And it sounds psychotic, but it conditions you to immediately have a triggered response and awareness that when the old thoughts, feelings, and behaviors kick in, I'm aware. Through breath, I neutralize myself, and then I get back to thinking and behaving and feeling the way that the new me will, until it becomes an automated response. And then you just are living the new version of you who thinks, feels, and behaves, values, believes this. And then all of your wildest relationships, dreams, experiences, finances all come to you.
I graduated from high school and I had this massive fear of going into debt because I'd already read finance books. I was a total finance nerd, and I didn't want to be crippled with student debt for the next, 20 or 30 years of my life. At the time, I was working at American Eagle, making $200 per paycheck. And obviously that was not going to pay for tuition. And I knew I was going to have to pay for school all on my own. So I went in to interview for this crazy knife job, as they call it.
Right.
And at first I was like, okay, kind of weird. But then this was the first time I'd been exposed to something where the harder you work, the more money you make. And I knew I could outwork anyone. So I got super excited. I worked my butt off that summer. I sold enough knives to make 10 grand and pay for my first year of tuition. And that's basically what I did every year until I was able to graduate completely debt-free.
Average Harvard graduate at the age of 34, 12 years after they get their bachelor's, earns $82,000 a year.
Oh my gosh.
If you can't graduate from Harvard and then go into the workforce for more than a decade and be at least statistically likely to make six figures, I don't know how we've gotten to this point and how it's not like a bigger thing, and how the entire federal education system, and I'm not one for government controls, but like, it's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be part of the self-education movement, which you are too, about saying like, you can go to someone like Rachel, or you go to someone like Jeff and learn more valuable skills in many cases that'll actually impact your quality of life than, for pennies on the dollar, compared to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and putting yourself in a debt that's going to take you 20 years to pay off. It's like graduating from school with no job and you already have a mortgage.
Yeah, it's insane and I love the way you put that, because we're in the internet age. You can go out and find free information anywhere or pay way less for information that's more valuable than a college degree.
Yeah, amen. So, I mean, good on you that that you got the information, you took action on it, and something clearly went right in your life to be the kind of person that would take action on that. And actually, maybe let's back up to that, because a lot of 18-year-olds, I mean, they work at American Eagle. They know that, quote, a job doesn't pay for crap. But yet many kids don't do what you did, which is go, okay, well, what do I have? I have my youthful energy. I have my agile mind. I have my hustle and grit. So let me go deal with this a different way because I don't want to borrow money. How were you that person? Like, no, for lack of a better way to say it, what made you different and smart?
I think they say fear is the greatest motivator. I think that's very true, because at a young age in middle school and high school, I grew up in a really wealthy county, and people I knew in my high school, when they turned 16, they would get brand new BMWs. And my family was not operating that way, right? We weren't going on vacations, let alone even going out to eat at restaurants. So from a young age, I felt like I didn't fit in. And that's definitely not the way you want to feel in middle school and in high school. Right. So I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to end up like everyone else struggling with money. I don't want to have to be on a budget my whole life or borrow money from family and friends to make it to my next paycheck. I wanted to be different. And I realized what I did then at a young age would either set me up for wealth or for poverty. So it was this fear that drove me forward, fear of not having enough money. I grew up with a very scarcity mindset, essentially, that there's never enough money to go around. I wanted to have enough money to take care of myself and my loved ones if anything happened. And that is why I am so ambitious and so goal-oriented, and I've achieved so much at a young age.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful combination. Fear is a hard loaded word, but let's call it circumspection. I don't know. I'm struggling for like a word I like more than fear, but whatever it is, that coupled with just like intense work ethic, coupled with a willingness to step out, take action, and bet on yourself. Because a lot of times what I find, this is why I don't love the word fear. I find fearful people a lot of times are also kind of paralyzed people. So their fear becomes a state that they're no longer taking massive action. You still took this great action. You basically bet on yourself, which a lot of fear-based people don't do, in my experience. So I mean, because it's not like you went and said, well, I don't know what you would go do to make a lot of money. But like you said, I know I can outwork everyone. I'm willing to do this very difficult thing, which, I mean, you're selling knives, like, to people. Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't already own knives.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like there's a built-in demand for what you have, for what you're selling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, how did you have the confidence as an 18-year-old to say, yeah, I can do that? I mean, I think that's why a lot of kids wouldn't try it, because they just wouldn't even see it as a possibility.
Yeah, that's so true. I've always been a very stubborn and independent individual. And when I set my mind to something, nothing stops me. And it's funny because my parents learned that about me at a young age. They're very supportive. And of course, when I first decided to sell Cutco, my mom in particular was less than thrilled about the idea of me selling sharp objects to, family, friends, and strangers. But right. She knew to just stay out of my way and let me do my thing. And I did it really well and successfully. I just remember my mindset at the time, failure wasn't even an option. I was going to make Cutco work. That I just remember thinking there was no other option. This is what I was going to do.
I've been there. When I got started online, I had $500,000 in debt and I was a piano player. So like, what do you do? I wasn't going to declare bankruptcy. I wasn't going to die. And I didn't want to fight with the U.S. Treasury Department because they were SBA loans. So I had literally the government calling me wherever I went. Somehow the phone would ring. They'd find me. I was like, this isn't going to be my life. I have no choice. And made it work. So, but it's just so cool. I'm kind of riffing on this point. It's so cool, but because it's so rare to find that in an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Usually you find that in like 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds who've like, they just got divorced or their life went off the rails somehow, or they're recovering and they're just like, I'm fed up. I don't want to be at rock bottom anymore. Now I'm going to commit. But it's so rare at 18. I don't know. Maybe I've made my point, but way to go.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So you get out of college, no debt. You go work as a financial advisor. You're making, what'd you say, 36, 32?
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. You figure out that's not the move. Start investing in real estate.
Yes.
So now my immediate question is, okay, you're making $30-something thousand a year. How the heck do you have the money to go invest in real estate?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked because I'm 28. I own almost 40 units. So the question I get more than anything is, are you a trust fund baby? And the answer is no. No, I'm not. I've actually never made six figures in my life. So the reason I was able to start purchasing real estate is I was just able to be very frugal and responsible with my money at a young age. So even when I was making $30-something thousand, I was saving 50% of my income. It was a big sacrifice. I wasn't living the life that my friends were living. You know, if I went out to dinner, I wasn't buying anything. I was eating beforehand and going out and having fun. And
Right.
I rented out a room from somebody I found online who ended up being a good friend of mine. I was working out outside. I didn't have a gym membership. So I just found ways to be extremely frugal. So it didn't take very long to save up a little chunk of money. The other thing we had going for us is that we invested, when I say we, me and my husband, we invested in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's a great place to invest. Housing prices are reasonable. Really anywhere in the Midwest where there's a good rental market is a great place to invest. So our first duplex cost $100,000. We each put in $10,000 just from our own savings so that we could get the down payment for the first property. So that's how we got started with real estate.
Okay. Well, so, I mean, if you're making 30-something thousand and you're saving 50% after tax, so I mean, you're basically living on like 15 grand a year.
Yes, I was. I remember my monthly expenses at times would be, it would be $1,000.
I mean, well, that's the answer, folks. You know?
That's how you retire early. No.
Yeah. I mean, you when we talk about sacrifice, get clear on what you want, and it has to be so big and compelling that you're willing to sacrifice in the short term. I'd say you did. I mean, $1,000 a month to live is crazy. Okay, so then you start doing that. God, it all happened so fast. I mean, you're only 28. So, and you retired a year ago. So you started doing that, what, at 22, like when you got out of college?
No, actually, I didn't start investing in real estate until I was 27. So it was definitely a few years, in 2017.
Okay. So
is when I started.
When you were like, what, 26 or no, 25?
25. Yeah, 25.
Okay. So you started in 2017. You retired in 2019.
Yes, it went very fast. I never thought it would go so fast. My initial plan with real estate was to buy one single family house per year for 15 years, all on 15-year mortgages. And so I figured after that 15-year period, when the mortgages started getting paid off, I would retire. So my initial goal was to retire in my mid-30s. However, it obviously happened a lot faster. We were able to scale for a couple different reasons. First, we were already saving a good chunk of our incomes. Not that we were making six figures, I've never made six figures, but we were saving a good chunk of money. Secondly, any house that we purchased, we weren't going out and spending the cash flow. We weren't increasing our quality of life and spending more money. We were saving and reinvesting all of the cash flow. And then third, this is the most important part, is that I had my real estate license from a couple stints I had earlier in real estate. And I never had it to have clients or help people buy and sell houses. I only had it for my own purposes as an investor. So in every deal, I would represent myself as the buyer's agent. And after it closed, we would completely wipe out our savings to buy a property. But after it closed, I would get a commission check back for thousands of dollars. And that would kind of kickstart our savings for the next property. So that's how we were able to scale so quickly.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you know you can get a free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut, which shows you the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy. And there's a special link just for this episode in the description. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Typically, the seller's agent is going to split their 6% with the buyer's agent, or 4 to 6%, whatever it is.
Exactly. So on a $100,000 deal, let's say, I would make almost $3,000.
Yeah. Which if you're putting up 10 or 15, 10 or 20, whatever, between you and your husband, and then you're able to immediately put roughly 20% of that back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's almost like if you could take like a 6-year-old kid and put like a 65-year-old brain in the 6-year-old kid and be like, okay, little Billy, this is how you're going to live for the next 30 years so that you can have the most accelerated timeline to retirement imaginable. That's basically you, only you're not Billy, you're Rachel. And it's just still, I mean, what's crazy about this story, and I hope everybody's having the same reaction to me, like, that's it? Like, there's nothing actually magical about that. It's actually just shows how doable it is. Because like literally, I mean, tell me what I'm missing, but other than maybe saying, well, I was fortunate that I was in Louisville, Kentucky, is there anything, like any twist that I'm not hearing that makes what happened for you different than what could happen for someone else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, when you think about it, it's the most boring story. It's save a lot of money and then buy a property. I mean, there's not a lot to it.
So it's interesting to try to diagnose, like, okay, where would that plan go wrong for most people? So you found a husband who was on board with the same program.
Yes.
Right.
So, and that was helpful because I think it's less scary to invest when you have, a business partner or somebody you're doing it with. It's almost like you feel like the risk is shared between another person. Right. So that made it easier because it's obviously a scary thing to get started. But I think where most new investors make a mistake is when they're projecting out the numbers and kind of running the numbers on the property. I think they severely underestimate the expenses. And they could end up buying something that's not a great investment, because it's easy to think, okay, here's the rent, here's the mortgage payment. So rent minus mortgage, this is how much I'm going to be making. No, that could not be further from the truth. You have to think about things like the HOA fee and the lawn care. Who's going to pay for that? You or the tenant. What about the utilities? Who's going to pay for that? What about vacancy, maintenance, capital expenditure, property manager? There are so many different expenses associated with owning a rental property. So if you can estimate those correctly and be really conservative, that's one thing I always did well, was I was very conservative in my numbers, added a buffer even for all the expenses I might not be thinking about. And if the numbers still work, then that investment property is gold and you should put an offer in.
Yeah. And those property, so, I mean, it's cool. I noticed you have Rich Dad Poor Dad on your shelf. I have it. I have my copy right here.
I love it.
And this is a new copy, but I had one 20 years ago when I was in my early 20s. And I read that, and at like early 20s, I started kind of what you're saying, like I'm gonna buy a house. And frankly, I a few of them I still have, and I'm talking houses that I did a cash advance off of credit. I did all the stuff that conservative, smart Rachel would have told me not to do. Like I did a cash advance off a credit card to get the down payment. Now I'm paying that back at 24% interest or whatever. But a couple of those I still own. I actually acquired 4 in my 20s. 2 I still own. 2 I lost. Got foreclosed, wrecked my credit. Didn't really matter because I also lost the restaurant, so credit was shot anyways. But it was exactly because of what you just said. Failure to properly account. And like, even when you read the books, they'll be like, well, you should figure a 10 to 20% vacancy rate. But it's like, maybe over time that's true, but you have to be able to deal with what if it's 50% in that first year? Because if you don't survive the first year, you won't have 20 more years for it to average out.
Exactly. Always run multiple scenarios, run the numbers, what you actually think they'll be, but then run a worst case scenario and ask yourself, if I had to carry the mortgage for 5 months, would I be able to financially, or is that going to cripple me? Because those are the kinds of things you have to survive as a property owner. Yeah,
because they're going to happen at some point. And if you're lucky, they don't happen until you've had the property for 10 years. But if you're unlucky, they can happen in the first or second year.
Yeah, exactly.
It's happening to me. And then you lose everything.
Mm-hmm. It's happening to me right now with coronavirus.
Yeah.
Because my rental income has been impacted a ton. I mean, in a normal month, we make anywhere from 8 to 10 or 12 grand per month in profit from our rentals alone.
Mm-hmm.
But then in April, when coronavirus got really intense, we only made $1,000 from our rental properties in profit. So
and
that's
you're not allowed to
enormous.
evict anyone. They just, the CDC.
Yeah, it's awful. So enormous decrease. But the way I saw it is, there's a lot of landlords obviously doing better than me. There's a lot that are worse off than me. And if my worst case scenario is that I break even for a few months, I'm totally fine with that. But the only reason I wasn't in a total panic in April is because I had other income streams keeping me afloat. And that's the importance of income diversification. Have multiple sources of income, because that way you're covered when, not if, something happens to your primary income source.
Everything you're saying is in the category of, if you've been around this type of thing, right? If you read personal development books, if you read business development books, if you're reading investing, like this is all standard fare insight for people that do commit to developing that part of their life, right? Like, multiple streams of income, erring on the side of caution, living frugal. I mean, it's like kind of like common sense stuff.
Yeah.
And yet it's not common at all because so few people do it. So I'm curious, your vantage points on like, why is it that this stuff is so easy to say, but so hard for most people to do?
I love this question. So I make the analogy between finance and dieting all the time, because we all know what we should be doing. We know not to eat sugar, and we know to work out, and we know to save money for the future. So why don't we do it? It's because self-discipline is so much harder. Having the knowledge, fine, but it doesn't really count. What counts is implementation. And when it comes to those two things, it really comes down to the ability to delay gratification. Can you sacrifice pleasure now so that you can obtain an even bigger reward in the future? If you can see it that way and you can execute on that, then you'll have a lot of success.
All about implementation. And that's what I think really just still kind of, I'll say it again, staggers me about you. Is like, I don't know very many 18-year-olds that are great implementers. That, like, apparently you were born as a great implementer.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what was different. I don't know if it just had a rebel streak. And I mean, I've always had the attitude of I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. So maybe that's part of it. But I'm glad, because I truly think that like one of the secrets to success is focusing on execution. We can consume all day. I can read books all day. I can listen to podcasts and do that stuff all day. But are you taking action on it? Because that's the only part that matters.
Mm-hmm. So what is your... I gotta assume that someone to be as successful as you, as quickly as you, is very disciplined, and that probably shows up in like routines or habits or behavioral patterns that you're kind of maybe anchored to. And first of all, am I right? And secondly, could you talk about them if so?
Yeah, 100%. Have you read the book, The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod? Okay,
yeah,
one of my...
Savers.
Yes, The Savers. It's one of my top 5 favorite books. Totally changed my life. And I implement those practices daily. But a couple of the ones that are my favorites are meditation. Even if you only have 5 minutes to meditate, it can change your whole day. And not only did I do it for anxiety and stress, but I noticed once I was doing it consistently, I had such greater focus, and I was able to be a lot more productive because I wasn't getting distracted by everything, because it's all about controlling your thoughts and controlling your mind. So that's been a huge one for me. Another thing that I like to do, especially if I'm just not in a great mindset, I'm feeling down, I will do a daily gratitude practice. And I like to do it at the end of the day. I'll write down 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for. And I used to think that this was just silly, like stupid thing that somebody would do. But then, because I'm a very practical person, I don't love the woo-woo stuff. But then once I actually started doing it, and I did that for several days in a row, I noticed that I was automatically looking for things to be grateful for throughout the day. And I trained my mind to have this attitude of gratitude. So I love that practice, because you can really train your mind to be more positive. And then the other one is reading. I love to read, but again, the focus has to be on the execution of what you're learning, not just reading. But I also love reading for pleasure, fiction books. I'll do half and half.
Do you think like you're kind of actually a boring person? Like it would be boring. It would be boring to just like watch your day.
I don't know. I probably before I retired, because all I did was work. I mean, we worked 80-hour weeks before I quit my job. But now it's so funny because I've always been so goal oriented. I've always focused on how can I monetize this? How can I monetize this? And now that I've quit my job and I have all this time, I've realized, okay, Rachel, you don't have to monetize everything you do, right? It's okay to have fun. It's okay to have a hobby that you do just for pleasure. So now we're doing more hiking and I'm doing more things just for fun as a hobby. We're even thinking about taking a year next year to travel all around the Western US.
So what was it that you were really after, like, as you were doing this? And I'll say, I wouldn't be surprised if at 28 years old, it doesn't change. Like you still have all this time. You could decide when you're 35, like, oh, there's this other thing. But I mean, at least thus far, what is it that you were really after? And do you feel like you've achieved it?
I was after freedom. And to be specific, I lived in Kentucky for most of my life, and I love Kentucky, but I also want to travel and explore the world, and I want to climb mountains. So I knew I didn't want to live there my whole life. So the thought of being constrained to a location, I hated that. I wanted to be able to work wherever I wanted to work. And then the other thing that I began to disagree with as I was working in the corporate workforce was this attitude of trading your time for money. I hated that. I remember I would work 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at one job. And so it was a normal day. It was just moved up by half an hour because that's what I preferred. And my manager at the time sat down with me and she said, Rachel, you're not really creating the right perceptions by leaving at 4:30. I don't think that looks good. I think you need to wait until 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm getting all of my work done and then some. And you're more worried about the perceptions and the time and the hours that I'm putting in instead of my output. I hated that, especially after selling Cutco and being rewarded for output. That's how I think we should be paid, is based on what you're achieving in a day. So it just began to make me feel a little bit trapped. I didn't want to be trapped to certain hours or to a certain location. I wanted to have freedom of my time, freedom of my location, total financial independence. That's what I was going after. And yes, I definitely think I've achieved it, because now I get to work when, where, and if I want, and it's a lot of fun.
For a lot of things, you've got to be able to build a database. You've got to be able to nurture your database, and then you've got to fulfill it. You've got to, so my business, the fulfillment's like doing the contracts and looking at houses, ideally taking listings. That's not that hard. So as long as you're paying attention and you want to learn, like, you can knock off that third thing. Nurturing the database it's a lot of people think it sucks, but it's the necessary evil. If you want to be successful, you've got to stay in contact with those people, and it can be automated. That's where technology steps in.
Right.
Least. And then the first part, that's the holy grail. That's what I figured out kind of in that second year or the end of my first year, is like, crap, like, I've got to figure out a way to build a database. My dad wasn't the mayor. Like, how am I going to possibly do this? I got to feed my family. And I would always drill down. I went out to coffee with some girl or some 28-year-old mom, and she had just done 3 closings. I'm like, what is going on? How come I don't have 3 closings? I'm smart. I'm working hard. And I'm like, so what did you do before this? And she's like, oh, well, I was and they always are very dismissive of it. They don't want to tell you. Same thing in the world. And I had to drill down. I remember specifically with her, I was like, so what did you do? And she's like, well, I was a youth minister. I was like, oh, how big was the church? And she's like, 10,000 members. And so what were you doing? Well, I was the head youth minister and I interacted with this. And I'm thinking like, the college student ministry for the last 10 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, she has thousands of people that have gone through there that are now first-time home buyers.
Yeah. And
they remember her as this like awesome moral authority figure. And no, I'm not knocking her. It's super cool, but it's like the guy selling supplements, and they're like, buy my protein powder so I can buy more steroids or something. It's like, well, like, you're not telling me where you're really getting this from.
Right. Oh my gosh. That's such a good analogy. Yeah. The juice guy at the supplement store who's like, this whey protein is laced with additional branch chain amino acids that really give you that pump. And meanwhile, he's in the back injecting himself in the butt with like Sustanon.
We're going to have to really work hard not to go off on a fitness diatribe on this. But anyway, talking about doing the hard thing, the reason I'm being really successful right now is because I'm not taking much of my agent's commissions, first of all. So they like it and they want to stay with me. But it's because I'm getting like well-dressed, well-spoken, articulate, educated people who drive nice cars, all those dumb things you have to have in real estate to look the part. But I have convinced them, this is where my good sales comes in. Somehow I've convinced them to do the hard stuff. So I just got off the phone with an agent who was in literally I'm going to toot her horn for a second. She's 8 months pregnant, literally. It's 100 degrees outside. And she was just now literally walking around Highland Park, talking to people who rent homes in that amazing Highland Park is like, every town's got one where it's like it's like the highest rated public school and all the mansions that were built in the 40s and some new construction, everything's cool and eclectic or whatever. So in Dallas, that's Highland Park.
Right.
She was out there in 100-degree weather, literally 100 degrees, 8 months pregnant, knocking on people's doors who were paying, $6,000 a month or more to rent in that neighborhood, because that's how she gets leads in that little market.
If you want to have a great life, you have to be great.
Yeah.
There's no shortcut around it. Like if you don't have the life you want, it's a reflection of the value that you've provided to the market. I mean, it's little things like the books you read, or if you read books, or the language you use, the words you use, the way you hold eye contacts, your physical posture. Like we want to live in this world that I think there's a sort of a general ethos in the world of wanting to like reduce human variation so that it's like more fair. It's not fair. Fairness itself wouldn't be fair because it would penalize people that are better. Mm-hmm. So if you want a better life, Jim Rohn said, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact is, you and I know this, especially you, but now me, because of real estate, is 99% of people out there aren't willing to do work consistently. They're not willing to do mundane stuff. So if someone called me or they called you and they said, and you love to help people, it's not even about a coaching thing or anything. If someone said, Jeff, please tell me how to time block so next year I can be supporting my family and buy a better house or whatever their dream is, or support my ministry or something, great. You would tell them like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, you got a laptop, you know how to smile or whatever it is, like, here's your schedule. The hard part is actually sticking with it after day 2 or 3 or 4 or week 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, it's not here's the thing. It's just really hard. Like every damn morning comes so early, but somehow the people that I have on my show that are really, really, call them outliers of success. I haven't had one person on my show that got lucky. I haven't had one person on my show that, it leveraged nepotism. I mean, obviously you use what you have, but they weren't gifted. They're all fanatical about doing things that, like you say, a lot of people, I don't know what the data is, if it's the majority or the minority or the plurality or the what, but I know that there are a lot of people that just won't get up that early. They won't be that regimented. They won't be that disciplined. They won't say no to 98% of the crap that most people say yes to, like video games and Sports Center and, dumb sitcoms and, getting embroiled in arguments with their wife that are or their husband that are unproductive and lead nowhere and just drain their energy, and like not eating crappy food. And it's just like 100 little micro decisions every single day that ultimately determine whether you have it or not. And I don't know, man, it's just hard. That's why it's our first core value. And so you talk about real estate. I mean, your model, just to be clear, you haven't shortcutted knocking doors.
No, so our secret is finding, like I said, articulate, nice looking people who are put together that want to work.
Well, that's not fair. I want to be 400 pounds. I want to have splotches of facial hair on parts of my body that aren't even supposed to have hair. And I don't want to have to bathe very often. And I still want to get rich, man. What about me?
In this business, and I'm sure if you're using your face, you have to be put together. This is like my worst dress outfit ever, but like you've got to be put together. you need to be someone that people like genuinely want to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got the what's the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So you've got to be personally put together. You've got to look the part, talk the part, be articulate, know the market. Same thing for your business. You've got to your your disciples have to know what they're pushing or selling backwards and forwards. But also, just before I forget, that how to win friends and influence people. Get people to tell you their story. People love to talk about themselves. So anytime you're in sales, I mean, it might be different if you're selling a $5 widget across the entire internet, but if you're selling a high ticket item and you're actually conversing with someone, people love to talk about themselves. Get people to tell you their story. And I think another reason I've been successful, and I would bet money you're like this, and we talked about my dad, who was a self-made man, was very successful, was like this, is be genuinely interested in people. Have a real curiosity about what makes them tick, what made them successful. Get people to tell you their story, and you'll find like you can develop, like that's one of the secrets I think for building your database.
Your results in life are always just a function of your effort multiplied times either your skills and or your network.
I get extremely nervous when I'm doing something that's out of my comfort zone. Like if you're not getting out of your comfort zone and pushing yourself like that, it's the consistent drudgery, the boring stuff that makes champions. And then you combine that with first of all, some self-awareness, talking about how you look and talk and act and present yourself, but some self-awareness, the ability to do that kind of drudgery, monotonous stuff every day, time block and stick with it. And then getting outside of your comfort zone and talking to people that, you feel nervous about reaching out to. That's what it takes to be wildly successful.
There's no mystery to what you do. It's the hard part is becoming or being the person that will actually do it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so well said. And I wasn't even thinking about that, but that you just hit the nail on the head. I'm going to remember that and use that when I'm with my coaching. That's the hard part, is becoming that person, like being the person who's willing to just like give into the habit. It's so, think of, not to be like the meathead thing again, but just with sports and like people who become champions. I grew up, this, Jeff's you've hung out with George Foreman, world heavyweight champion at age 44 or something crazy. Good friend of my family's. Like the work ethic that these people have to do the mundane stuff over and over again. Like it's not like go to bed at 10 o'clock every night, get up at 5 every morning, like put in the miles, do the work. It's so much drudgery, but the payoff is so beautiful. Being an independent person who's wealthy and calling your own shots.
Yeah.
And business that you can sell someday. Like the businesses you teach people how to build, they can sell it for 3 or 4 times net, I'm sure.
Would you be jealous if one of your agents like actually grew their business bigger than yours?
No. I actually tell them, I'm like, hey guys, the only way I actually make more than you is if I have this many people on the team.
Right.
Like the goal is for us all to be, kicking it back in our second homes.
Tell me about your time efficiency and what's happened in the last few years.
The biggest thing that's going to get an entrepreneur, your people, my people, all entrepreneurs, is you're not punching that clock for somebody else. That's why people have these lame jobs that they hate, is because they can just show up and then, and then veg out and just, be the cog in the wheel. So the thing that we all have to get over, and it's still a battle with you, with me, with all of us, the thing, like daily, you've got to take your time blocking as seriously as if you're going to get fired if you don't show up. So especially if you're like working from home nowadays with kids, and like I've got to, like, I'm not a jerk, but I've got to make a very definitive, proclamation with the household and with myself and everything. Put the phone on do not disturb. Whatever you need to be doing for that amount of time, like you got to do that come hell or high water. And then if you stick to your time blocking, whatever your hustle is if you stick to your time blocking and it's not working, and that's why you need someone like, maybe you can't be someone's coach, but like the coaches that work in your organization, they're the ones that can hold it. For now, I'm small enough, I can keep my people accountable with their time blocking. But that's the biggest thing, is these people have to stay focused. And it's just like with, my kids and everyone looking at Facebook and the scroll and everything, dude, people get such a little amount of work done. So, you can tell I'm getting worked up about time blocking, but that's the whole frigging thing. If you organize your time, and the funny thing is, this is a big point I want to make. A lot of people feel like they're working 60 or 70 hours a week. And I don't just mean like they're being kind of inefficient with task interruption or whatever. but they're really working 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week. And I mean, including all the time they spend wasting on switch tasking.
Mm-hmm.
Time block, stick with it no matter what. And you'll realize that, like, my agents can be insanely successful, legitimately working strictly 40 hours and nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
He is in the entrepreneurial world is getting people to actually put in 40 hours of true entrepreneurial work.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think people got to realize. Entrepreneurial work isn't like job work.
No.
It's you do 40 hours of frankly what we both do pretty well at this point. You're wiped out, man. You're not hanging out late. You're not going out for beers with your coworker. Not that we really have coworkers to go out for going out for beers, but I mean, you're just done. I just want to be with my family. I use an app called Horo, Horo, which is, by the way, a horrible name, but Horo. And I have these, if I could turn my camera, you could see I have the 25-minute default setting on there that literally every 30 minutes I hit it. And I do not, and I won't say I do this every 30 minutes of the day. I have a lot like these interviews and stuff, but I try to have at least a few hours every day where I can stack up like 5 or 6 blocks of 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And for that 25, you treat it like it's your entire 40-hour work week. Like you said, you're going to get fired if you don't clock in, work, and clock out every 25 minutes.
And tell our audience here about how horrible switch tasking is, or task switching, whatever it's called.
Yeah, task switching. Oh, I mean, it's contextual switching. I forget what the stat is, but I mean, it takes the brain like 20 minutes to reset and get into a different neural groove when you change from one thing to another.
It was
checking your email. If you're working on copy and you pop over to check your email, you toast like a whole hour of productivity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I mean, you remember when I got started, remember when I started playing the piano?
Yeah.
Nobody, I talk about being a pianist, and I think a lot of people don't understand what I mean. When I started playing the piano when I was 17, and this is, I think, what's propelled me to do a lot of other things, is that I started my career, my grown-up career, with this massive fear that I was so far behind. Most people enter the workforce at 18 or 22 or 26, or, if they go to grad school or whatever, and they're right on track with where they're expected to be.
Yeah.
But when I made the decision that I wanted to be a professional musician, to be a serious piano player, serious pianists started when they were like 5.
Yeah.
So when I was at the age where most people are entering the workforce feeling like they're on track, I started feeling like I was 12 years behind.
Yeah.
And I've been playing from behind ever since. And I think that unreasonable, frankly, exhausting sense of urgency, because I actually was so far behind, is probably responsible for 90% of what I've done well.
Yeah. Well, and not to just keep, patting you on the back, but when you got into internet marketing, you were like people who just stumble upon you right now, where you're like the guy sitting there, how do I make money from home? I'm smart and I've got a laptop. What can I do?
And I was $500,000 in debt.
Yeah. $500,000 in debt. It's a cool backstory for marketing purposes, but this is so real. Like you were overweight and you were staying up all night. You would stay up all night, just like staring at the blue screen, trying to figure out what the best operating system is. How do I do this? Right. So, and I think what you're doing now is like, you want a shortcut for people. Like you want to save the old Jeff, like the Jeff that was whatever it was 12 years ago or whatever. Like you want to pick them up, shake them, show them what to do, open their eyes, and like celebrate their success. That's what you're doing.
And I would say for you, you didn't come into real estate as like a, 22-year-old girl who just, wrapped up playing some college soccer, and now you're going to go do this like cool thing. You were married. You had 2 kids. You had ground it out for how long did you own the gym?
I sold my gym. I'll have a gym for like 7 years, worked my tail off, dusted on, and so broke, working so many hours and so broke. Like this is the pull back the curtain like stuff I can get emotional about. It's like when you're 39 years old, having to ask your parents for like a loan, like a loan that you know, they're probably just going to forgive, you know, and let you slide. Like that's the work. That's so humiliating.
Yeah.
And so like you talk about, like I had nothing. Well, when I got into real estate, I got one kind of hand me deal for a client that essentially felt sorry for me. So I got a referral fee, and luckily I could use that to like survive for the next like 2 or 3 months. But I had nothing. So that's why I'm so passionate about the time blocking. Like the fear, like, and you watch, you know, you and I both study other, like this whole podcast, this YouTube, like we're studying other people's success. When you drill down on the people who are billionaires and like to have what you and I are shooting for, they all have some weird like baggage where something happened where they've got this fear motivating them. And that's why I tell my wife with our kids, I'm like, I don't really have this awesome desire to make their lives super comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it looks like to have some sort of like healthy amount of trauma, but man, you got to tap into whatever your weird baggage is that motivates you and your fear. And I guess that's what it takes when you're like not self-made person, but when you're an entrepreneur, like dictating your own schedule, there's something that's got to make you focus.
I mean, we're mining our backstory here pretty hard. I mean, you mentioned the school we went to. We grew up around kids who later became adults who never were really allowed to have hard times. We grew up around a lot of rich kids, and some of them were never pushed out of the nest. And those are some of the most debilitated people I know.
And even the ones that are like checking the box and now they're making their 200 grand a year because they've done everything right. Now they're 40 or whatever.
Yeah. They got into Vanderbilt and then they went to work at Deloitte and Touche and now, good gigs, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's cool. Like I don't want to diss that, but man, I love my life. Like I love the idea of having my back up against the wall. And then like, I had no knowledge about real estate at all. I just knew like, okay, there's a really low barrier to entry here. Like there's a low barrier to entry to being an internet entrepreneur. Like
right.
It's not, like you can have a heartbeat and get your real estate license as long as you can sit there in class and regurgitate some stupid like.
I think you said heartbeat. It sounded like herpy.
If you have herpes, you can be a real. I've seen some of the lips in that class.
Yeah, exactly. Though. Not to interrupt.
From not eating food. But anyway, yeah. I don't even know what tangent I'm on at this point, but
there's low barriers to entry. Your back was against the wall. You were you're hitting up your parents for money. So frankly, you're at that point you're afraid. Not afraid for your life, but afraid for the future of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. You want, like you and I have always wanted to be something special, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the hardest thing about thinking big is big dreams create big disappointments if they're not realized.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think another skill that a lot of good entrepreneurs have that you and I definitely have is like being the eternal optimist. Like you've got, or that unfounded sense of confidence or something.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, if you're an entrepreneur watching this, like you need to realize like, no matter, like if you are just willing to do something as simple as time block and just do the system, like do what you say, Jeff, or do what I say, people on my team, just follow the frigging system and wait and see where you are in 6 months.
I was willing to put in the work and the time, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times it'd be like Thanksgiving meal and somebody would call and say, hey, I want to see a house, and I'm cooking Thanksgiving dinner. Like, cool, I'll be there. I mean, I did whatever it took originally. I mean, I'd show houses on Christmas and Christmas Eve. And it's still amazing that people would allow me to actually show the house at that time, or they would even ask to show, but I mean, it really, I did, right? And I had my kids 50% of the time at that time. And so when I had my kids, I worked like crazy. And when I didn't have them, when I had them, I was with them, but when I didn't have them, I would just work. So I was willing to put the time in. I took a ton of education and got credentialed in, almost any certification I could get my hands on back then in real estate when I was first starting. I invested in my business. I mean, I was not afraid to spend money to make more, right? Back then I was putting my listings on television. I would, put CDs on the fly on my real estate signs and put like 20 pictures on the CDs where most people were just doing like black and white flyers. I just made sure that I was doing things differently. And I really just took care of my clients, right? I mean, I love people, and I want people to like me, obviously, and I like doing right by people. So, I always say people before things, and the things will come. It was really about, whether they could afford it or whether it was a good investment. And more often than not, I would say, hey, this might not be the right house for you, and here's why. And people were like, do you even want to sell real estate? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I don't feel, I can tell the market's crashing, and you work at Kmart, you're going to spend $500,000 on a house. I don't see how that's going to work.
Right.
And, that was really what was happening back then. But it just, it worked. I worked really hard and just had good intentions, and, all as well.
So your first year, 69 houses, how many of those were your listings on the seller side, and how many of those were house hunting for buyers?
Buyers at first. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the standard where you start is buyer representation, right? Which is like pretty brutal, thankless work.
It is. Yeah. It was pretty brutal. It's it's every weekend, every night. It's on their schedule, drop everything, because if you don't drop everything, they'll go to somebody else. Real estate's pretty, dog eat dog. I did open houses back then, and door knocked back then, and did all the things that, I would never do now, but I did them back then. So, and they worked. They didn't work as effectively as the things that I do now do, but they definitely did work. And, but most people are not willing to do the type of things that it takes. Like, most people would not be willing to door knock, and would not be willing to, have a listing of, and hand out 100 flyers, every weekend, or just do those kind of things. They wouldn't be willing to hold an open house and then afterwards go bring a gift to the clients that showed up and say, hey, you won the raffle, and by the way, here's my marketing plan. Or, they wouldn't. Most people are not willing to do what it takes in a lot of careers and a lot of professions, because they let the excuses come in the way.
So how did were you always like that, or was it the desperate situation you found yourself in that kind of lit a fire that maybe you didn't even know was there?
Well, kind of both. I didn't realize until I've gotten older just kind of how driven I am. But when I was younger, I found myself in some trouble. I ended up in juvenile hall, and then I ended up going to a group home in high school, and then spending my remainder 3 years of high school in a foster home. And during that time, I was a good kid, but I had some family problems. And so, but deep down, I was always a good kid, but I just found my way into some negativity. And so I remember at one point thinking, I can keep doing this juvenile hall thing, or I could be different, like I'm a good kid. Like, I don't want to be like this. So I just made the conscious decision to sort of be the best I could be in everything that I was doing. Right. And so I remember deciding to go to college, and I applied for a scholarship, and I got a scholarship from the juvenile hall that I was in. And the guy told me when he gave me the scholarship, and it wasn't very much, it was like $1,200 a year, but for me that was a lot because I was paying for my own college and everything. And he said, Krista, one day when you make it big, just remember, like, to be a good person and to pay it forward. And I remember that. I remember him handing me the check, like literally it was a check back then, like a handwritten check, and him telling me pay it forward and to be a good person. And then the meaning of that check was like, there were times where I couldn't eat, and that check like put, food in my stomach. So I took it serious, and, I just kept trying to be the best person that I can be, and, had great friends and read great books and hired great mentors, and just continue to then and now, work on the person that I am.
So what is it that you find as the parallel in real estate and now digital marketing that, I've been searching for this answer for over a decade. Why is it that anybody can, but so few will?
I think a lot of it has to be, it's your own belief system, right? And I know that sounds so cliche, but if you read the book from Lewis Howes, School of Greatness, one of the things that he found that people had in common was the fact that they believed they could do it. And for some reason, I just always have believed that I can do it. Like, I remember being at a real estate training about 5-6 years ago, and them asking us to put our goals down. And I wrote down $2 million. And everybody around me was like 100,000, 150, 75,000, 250. And I was like, oh man, I went to erase my goal of $2 million. And I was like, why am I going to erase it? I can do it. Like, I just got to work for it. Right. And I did. Like, we've had, $2 million, more than $2 million years in real estate. We just brought my digital marketing company from 0 to 8 figures in 35 months, right? From no one knowing who I was. And was hard. Don't get me wrong. I made so many mistakes. There was a year of like, how am I even paying? How is this even happening? How am I paying these bills? Because it seemed like I was spending more than I was making. And I was, quite frankly, a lot of those months. And it's taken me quite a while to really kind of like be profitable, if it makes sense, in that space, because I was trying to grow so fast. I just kept throwing things back into it. And I don't regret that at all, because it's worked out well for us. But I mean, it's just believing in myself, and when I fall, like not wallowing in it, but just going, okay, that happened. Now how do we adjust? How do we adapt? How do we move over it or under it or through it? How do we just keep pushing forward? And one more thing I will say is just starting, right? Like I start way too fast, meaning most people think like, we made this decision, why are you already starting? It's like, well, I mean, because I need to start. And so a lot of people are just getting ready and they're aiming, but they never fire, where I fire first and then I get ready and then I aim. And so along the way, I'm making mistakes, I'm adjusting, I'm adapting, but that happens when you wait and you plan and you try to make it be perfect. So many people are trying to be perfect and make everything be so ready. And when they actually launch or do something, they still make all the mistakes that I made when I just started. I think that's been.
Right. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer, but if there's a right answer, I think you got it right. It's not what you do, it's who you are and how you do. There's these intangible qualities, massive action taking, the ability to make a decision and go hard into that decision without equivocation, without second guessing. You're probably in some ways a really intense person that even sometimes makes people uncomfortable, because they're like, why is this lady so on all the time? Can't she just chill? And like, I'm right there with you. And the reason I say this isn't because it's good or bad. You are who you are. I am who I am. The people I have on the show are who they are. But based on what people say they want out of life, then you could argue that this is good. It is good to be this way. It is good to be intense. It is good to be extreme. It is good to be driven. It's good to be fast moving. It's good to be constantly moving and shifting and adapting and not getting stuck in analysis paralysis. It's good to be exactly like Krista if you want success, abundance, money, freedom, flexibility, lifestyle options, early retirement, right? Probably all the stuff that, well, you probably could have early retirement, but you probably won't take advantage of it. But I'm just saying, like, if people are listening to a show called Millionaire Secrets, Krista's telling you what to do.
Well, and not only that, I think, like I'm a huge component on mindset. I mean, like I my mindset like crazy. I read books constantly. I'm listening to audiobooks. I have my own affirmations. I visualize my day. I write out, how I want every aspect of my life to look, all the cliche things that everyone says. But if you look at all the research and the science behind doing all those things that people think are so cliche and sound so like minuscule, it's huge. I mean, because your reticular activating system doesn't know where it wants to go unless you're telling it to. So I do all those corny things that people will say corny. And like my students will say, I hear this more than anything with my coaching students, like, Krista, not only have you changed my business, but you've changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I didn't change your life. You did. You are the person that changed your life. I was just a catalyst to help get you to get there. But the reason being is because in my trainings, where there's so much mindset. And I think so many people, honestly, Jeff, are just, they're broken. They have a hard time. They get so stuck. Like, if I have to hear one more time how horrible 2020 was, like, it's been one of the best years of my business, and with real estate agents and now local professionals that don't even really have the ability to invest in their business, but they are, because they know. And also a new opportunity has arisen, like, right? COVID, basically, I had two people in my company, very, very high up, my marketing manager, director, and my human resources director, go into business together to open a business in a competing business that directly correlates and competes with me. Okay. It knocked me on my butt for about 2 days. And I was like, oh my God, and I was just like, okay, I went full speed on how do we fix this? Like, how do we make this better? How do we, and it's been 6 months of just absolute, like, constantly fixing things that were broken and changing and modifying and adapting. And I'll tell you what, looking back now, again, it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because I didn't realize all the things that weren't working correctly, because I was just trusting in the process and not taking extreme ownership of my company. Right. But now it's like the company is in alignment. We're working together as a team. We fixed all the back end stuff. We're way, way, way more profitable now. Like, I was looking back, I'm like, I mean, there was months where I'd spend $470,000 in expenses. And I'm, now we're down to under 200, right?
Yeah.
All just these things that I thought was so bad, kind of getting on a tangent. But I just think that when you're in business, number one, you've got to believe in yourself. You have to know that stuff is going to happen. Things are going to come in your way, and you have to just be willing to adapt, and you have to be willing to invest and to take risks. I mean, how many people do you know that they want all of this stuff? They want to have the freedom and the flexibility and the time, but they're not, number one, willing to invest in themselves and the education and the skill to learn how. And number two, they're not willing to invest the time that it takes to get there. Right. Mm-hmm. It's like they want these things, but they're not willing. It's like, I know about hiring Russell Brunson. He helped me go from 0 to, 7 figures in 25 months, 26, 23 months. What was it? And now, to go from 0 to 8 figures in 35 months. It's from investing in his coaching and mentorship, and as well as, and upwards of around $300,000 in coaching and training over the past 3 years. When I just actually wrote it down, I did this thing in the inner circle, and I said, hey, we hit 10 figures, and here's all of you that I gave money to. I started listing out like 25 grand, 60 grand, 30 grand. I'm not kidding. It was close to 300 grand. And I'm like, and I know I forgot some of you. I was able to get to where I'm at because I took the investment. Now that money came out of my pocket, meaning I didn't see the profits yet of my business, but I just kept investing back in me. Does that make sense? And
if I heard your story right, you didn't really see the profits from that for like almost 2 years.
Yes, honestly, we have $1 million in the bank right now with We Need a Market Leader. So, and it's a little bit more, but it's taken us, 3 years to get there. Yes, we've made 10 million. Now we've got $1 million in the bank. And yes, we've bought things along the way, but now we're really starting to see the profits. And what I was getting to is that opportunities arise and you have to be willing to take them. Okay. And I'll give you an example. So I am with eXp Realty now. So I want to talk to you about your friend too. Your friend Rob, you said before we were done. So I went to eXp Realty because I'm coaching now 99% of the time. So this year I'll sell, I think 93 houses and in real estate, working 5 hours a month in real estate. So I work 5 hours a month. I record videos. I have a process and a team now that runs that for me. Very, very profitable company because I'm coaching. Well, I got nervous about being my own broker because I was afraid that I'm my own broker right now. I'm not involved as much. I don't want to get sued. So I'm going to go to eXp Realty and they're going to be my broker. And I'm going to be an agent, Homes by Krista, brokered by eXp Realty. Right. When this whole thing happened with my business partners, basically, it wasn't partners, but my two main head people. And I was like, man, this could all get taken away from me very quickly. And so an opportunity arose with eXp for me to build an organization within an organization. And so I took the opportunity, meaning somebody was like, listen, I know you went to eXp because you just wanted to, not have any liability, but have you really looked into the model? And I was like, no, I haven't. And they're like, if you just looked into the model, Krista, we think that you'd be shocked. So I was like, okay, I gave myself a month. I dove in, understood the model, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can help so many more people now. I could now help realtors across the country, bringing them into my eXp organization, coach them and train them in a different capacity and still be able to make a massive impact. And by doing that, like in a 4-month period, we brought in $1 million of projected income from the coaching because it's a whole different avenue. But my point is that had I just stayed stuck when that thing happened to me, and just been upset and hurt. And I wasn't through all the stages of grief, right? I was like angry and hurt and all those things. But then it was like, okay, I allowed my mind to think about ways to protect itself and to enhance and to move forward. And because of that thing that happened, it made me develop this whole new business, right? Now I've got a third one over here that I never would have even thought about doing because I thought so content, right?
Yeah.
So just being willing to take some risks and to, work a little bit harder. Yes, it's been a huge investment. I mean, I've invested time, investment of energy on that new business, but I'm also able to help a lot more people. Like it works. So when the crap hits the fan, look for the lemonade, right? Like think about how can I get out of this? How can I work this? Don't sit there and wallow and be pissed and be mad and sad and blah, 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 because you're going to keep getting more of that.
Yeah, somebody in an interview yesterday said everybody, and I've heard this before, they said everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. You got to make the investment if you want to get the payoff, right?
And if you hear, well, once I have the money, then I'll make the investment. It's completely the opposite. You need, think about how long it takes a doctor. And I love this because of your platform. You're all about learning and coaching and all this. Think about how long it takes a doctor to go to school. The amount of money they spend in school, the amount of time and years and years to become a doctor. And they make that investment to have this financial ending. Why is it that so many people, entrepreneurs, business owners, they don't feel that they need to put in the same, and not even close to the same? I mean, you and I both know that there's trainings out there for, $100,000 less than doctors pay that will make more money than a doctor will make. But most people are not willing to go make the dive, like you said. They're not willing to dive.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I have a pretty good theory on that. It's because people inherently are so much more willing to look outside themselves for security than inside themselves for security. Because the average, we have a part of a presentation in my company, ENTRE, where we call it the $190,000 difference. And that's the average cost of a Harvard education is $190,000. And it's like, what do people actually get for $190,000? Because the reality is now in the world we live in, you don't even get any information that you couldn't get for free on the internet. There's literally not one thing you can learn at Harvard that they have some proprietary claim to. It's all out there for free. So you're not paying for access to information. You're paying for curation. You're paying for an organized pathway. You're paying for relationships, networking, alumni. You're paying for, all this stuff, right? But all that stuff you're paying for is meant to come with it this external value that gets applied to you once you have the degree, or I call it the receipt, that people think, oh, well, now externally, they're going to provide me with more security, when the reality is, statistically, 12 years after graduating from Harvard, the average person is making $84,000 a year.
Yeah, the average graduate from Cornell, Harvard, all of them is between $56,000 and $65,000 a year to start.
Yeah. And 12 years later, they're still not making six figures.
So they're only making, 12 years later, those numbers are 85 grand. That is pathetic.
That's from Harvard. That's from the number one. Harvard and Stanford are the top two schools in terms of income. And it's, still not, the average graduate doesn't make six figures in their first 20 years.
Wow.
What are they doing?
Oh, I totally agree. I hate to admit this, but if my kids came to me now and said, Mom, we want to quit school and we want to go take this, this training on ClickFunnels, and I want to learn how to become this number one, I'd be like, if you're committed to it and you're dedicated, you're going to actually do it. And yes, I'll support you,
And by the way, you've sold over $1 billion in real estate, right?
I think it's like 10 billion. And it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm not going to probe you for details of your financial situation, but for anybody that's trying to do the math, realtor makes, even after splits, broker splits and everything, and just on either side of the transaction, you make 1% to 2% of the deal.
Yeah. I was making about 1.8 million, a year, bringing home about 1.5 million.
Yeah.
We don't have any debt. We own multiple homes. I've done well. Imagine my average is right now it's around 750,000. Back then, probably closer to 500,000 a year. And we charged a 3% commission. So, we did good. And I didn't have a huge staff. So most people, when they talk about, I sold 100 homes, it's with a team of 20.
Right.
Me, a transaction coordinator, and a marketing assistant. Right. That was all the 17 years up until the last year and a half before I left to go into coaching. It was just me. There was no other licensed agents doing that kind of numbers, but because of the systems and all that in place. Right. So it was a good living. It was a really good living. Right. But it wasn't something that, I love real estate, but I was on vacation, Jeff, and with getting up at 3 a.m, working for 6 hours, when you're selling 150, 160 homes, there's a lot involved when it's just you and, you don't have other agents helping. I was never off. I was constantly on vacation. My kids were like, Mom, get off the phone. Mom, listen to me. And one day I was like, I'm done. Like, I just cannot keep doing this anymore. It's been 17 years straight of just like pedal to the metal. You know, I'm not one that tends to stop. And I was just like tired of not ever being off.
Right.
So I got home and I called my brother and I said, listen, I need to teach you to be me pretty much. And, you know, I know we had like a 6-month plan, but I need it to happen like next week. So I need you here on Monday. So that's how it all happened.
Well, the reason I mentioned it is because, and I've been through this too, and this may sound cocky. It's not cocky. It's just, I think it's just properly informed and properly perceiving human value. To most people, you walked away from a multi-million-dollar business to gamble on a new business. I wouldn't have seen it that way, because being a residential real estate agent isn't a multi-million-dollar business for most people. It's actually a garbage business for most people. It was a multi-million-dollar business for you. That's not because of the residential real estate industry. That's because of you. So if you're the X factor to make what for millions of people is like a crappy part-time business that they maybe sell one house a year, and you sold 150 a year, and you're the X factor there, why would it be a gamble to take that X factor and apply it to another industry that frankly has equally low statistical outcomes, which is digital marketing and coaching? But who cares? Because you're the X factor and you're going to be just as good over here as you were over there, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't happen obviously overnight. I mean,
well, but that's part of being the X factor, is not being impatient.
Yeah. But like we had months in the coaching, like within a 2-year time frame, you know, like my best month in real estate, I made like $336,000 in a month. That was my best month. And we had a $670,000 months in coaching. And it took me, 15 years to get to that point in real estate, right? Which we did it in like 2. But again, the profits at first weren't
Right.
as much, because I just kept putting it back in. I'm like, put it back in. Like my goal was to just grow it as fast as I could,
I appreciate, by the way, I actually really love how transparent you are about the economics of your business. Some people like keep that close to the vest. Like it's when you're an entrepreneur, I don't feel like it's bragging. It's literally, it's data.
Yeah.
And data is only useful if it's visible.
Some people don't talk about this. Oh, I made $1 million, but it took me $1 million and $1 to make $1 million. Right? Like they don't talk about that at first. I could have been more profitable, but I really wanted to fast track. And so I was like hiring the best of the best to help me grow more quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't regret it, because now it's really done well from us. Just this past month, we've invested probably, I think around 60 grand just in coaching and support to help us get better. And that could have been profit, but it's like, I just know that in order for me to continue to grow and get where I want to be, I want to be able to have I want to enhance it by hiring people that know more in each specific subject than I do. One thing I will tell you though, that I realized this year after what happened, was I'm more careful where I spend my money. I'm much more careful who I trust.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with all these gurus out there right now that are, so they're experts. I make sure that they really, really are an expert, because what I found was that there's a lot of people that are claiming to be experts and geniuses in their certain profession, but they haven't really done what they're claiming. So that's one thing I'm careful with now, is like just really being careful as far as who I hire, making sure that they've actually done the walk the talk,
Yeah. So if we were going to try to like boil all the water out of this pan and say, okay, attention world, here is the formula for getting rich online. Let's just be tacky and call it that. I would say this: get really, really good at something, and just get really, really personally excellent in general. Like develop yourself to a place where you're confident and you can, humbly but accurately say, I am excellent. I am excellent at my craft. You are excellent at your craft. I'm really excellent at certain things, right? Like play a song on the radio. I can sit down and play it by ear. That's just something I'm good at, but like do the work. It could take 10 years. It could take 20 years. Do the work. There's no shortcutting the work. But once you've done the work to be a certain way, the internet is like steroids
And so you have built an 8-figure business in 3 years. I've built an 8-figure business in, roughly the same amount of time online, whereas it took you 15 years offline in real estate, because the internet has certain unique qualities. And that's why I evangelize it, that like, it doesn't mean that you don't have to be good. It's not like a substitute for skill or quality, but assuming you have skill or quality, the internet will light a fire in your life that nothing else can.
So so people ask me, well, what's your key to success? And I'll say this in both businesses. It's creating content and properly distributing it, right? So I call it the 7 C's. You got to commit to consistently producing content correctly. Correctly meaning it's the right content to the right people, and it's actually being seen. It's correctly being distributed, right? So if you can commit to consistently producing content correctly, you're going to make a connection. So you're going to convert more clients and customers. Okay. So the internet is so great, but if nobody is seeing your stuff, it doesn't make a difference. The key is producing quality content, right? Good information that's going to help and serve your audience, making sure that they're getting the right information at the right phase, cold, warm, or hot, depending on where they're at, and making sure it's actually being seen. And then once it's being seen, to continuing to being seen in front of those people, solving their problems, right? Because you cannot be a solution unless you're solving a problem. You can't be a solution unless you're being seen, right? Everyone wants to be known, but in order for you to be known, you have to be seen, you have to be heard, you have to be solving a problem. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that most people make is that they're producing content, but no one's seeing it because they're not investing in the skills and the strategies to make sure the content's actually getting proper exposure.
Given the very obvious truth of what you just said, the vast majority of realtors still have not leaned into video-based content digitally distributed.
Like 1%, not even that. And it's not just realtors. It's any local profession. An attorney, a doctor, an insurance agent, a mortgage broker. This strategy works for any type of profession or business, quite frankly, locally. Like if I asked you, Jeff, name the number one attorney or insurance agent or dentist or doctor or real estate agent.
Yeah, it's the guy that's either all over Facebook or runs the most TV commercials.
Yeah, or on the billboard, right?
Or the billboard, yeah.
Or you just know that person because you know them. But in most cases, you can't say, yeah, I know what that dentist is. I know what that insurance agent is. They're just, you can't think of them because no one's doing it. Perception is reality. So if somebody sees you all the time, all over Facebook or Instagram, whatever it might be, giving information, giving content, market updates, talking about like, hey, this is, it's tax time. Here's the top 10 things you need to do to make more money on your taxes this year, right? Or save money on your taxes this year. You're going to, that person is all of a sudden an expert, right? Yeah. And so it just works fabulously. So if anyone ever asks me, Krista, what would be your advice on how I can really start enhancing my business and grow and, actually truly be able to have more time and freedom? I'd say start producing more content, correctly distributing it through ads, and make sure you're solving problems.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely gonna love this one. Check it out.
The more you can be intentional, purposeful about your life and make a difference, the natural you have a high, and then you can live and you can build things. So few people are really healthy and wealthy because it's easier to take a pill than to get your ass in the gym.